It's not a rainy day today, so I would expect that our energy will be a little more. Good morning, everyone, once again. My name is Christiana Amodu. I'm the lead knowledge communications at Lofty Inc. Allied Partners Limited. I'm also a media practitioner. I've had so many stints at different media houses, from AIT to Trust Television, the broadcast arm of Daily Trust, to the Nigerian Custom Broadcasting Network. So I've been in the media field for almost a decade. So it is an immense pleasure to be here. I've also interviewed Dr. Woherem when I was at Moneyline with Nancy on AIT. So I know that he's an enigma that keeps unraveling with a lot of ideas and new things daily. And seeing the work that has been happening over the years, it is really, really impressive. And I want us to give him a round of applause once again, for the excellent work that has been going on in that sector. I will just go ahead to call some of our panelists to join me here. I would begin with Oluseye Taiwo Adepoju. Oluseye, the Oracle, is the managing partner, CEO, Strengths Africa Limited, a people and business support company positioned to help individuals and businesses build capacity, competencies, and competitiveness. Please welcome him to the podium. We're very small, but our hands can do magic. Thank you so much. I will also welcome Dr. Omar Adam. He is an AI researcher, startup advisor, academician, mentor for startup and STEM education. He is an advocate of SDG on the provision of quality education, industry, innovation and infrastructure, and climate change, with proven track records of leadership qualities and awards. Please, a round of applause for him as he comes forward. So our session is hybrid. We have some of our panelists here in the room, and we have some others joining us virtually. We have Pendo Manjele in Zambia. Pendo is an experienced data scientist and innovation leader with over 7 years of combined experience in information technology and financial services. Proven track record in driving digital transformation and operational efficiency through advanced analytics. Can we see Pendo? Okay, she's right there. Welcome and thank you for joining us. Pendo, if you're hearing us, I think you're on mute if you're speaking.
Hi, thank you. I am here. I hope you can hear me now.
Yes, we can. Thank you so much. We also have Nathaniel Kabede, Ethiopia, an aeronautical engineer with a master's degree in robotics and AI. As a co-founder of NERD, a private R&D company, he had the opportunity to lead innovative projects at the intersection of robotics and artificial intelligence. Please, let's welcome Nathaniel. He's joining us virtually also, one of our virtual panelists. Also on this esteemed panel is, do we have Nathaniel now? Okay, well,
can you hear?
Yes, we can.
Good to be here.
Thank you for being here. I would also introduce Henry Ogu. Henry is a senior managing consultant at Philips Consulting Limited, heading the financial technology services delivery of digital and technology consulting practice. He also heads the project governance unit at PCL, saddled with the responsibility of project performance optimization and compliance. Thank you, Henry. I can see that you're there. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure.
The last but not the least here is Tayo Showole. Tayo is the founder of Thrive Africa, a consultancy helping startups across Africa grow revenue. He also serves as the head of revenue at Telsac, a platform enhancing employee engagement and performance, and he's the founder of RevStar, a community for revenue-focused professionals. Please, a round of applause for him. Thank you, gentlemen and lady, for being here today. I always say panels are conversations. So it's not about us probably trying to posit or trying to fight points. So it's always about having conversations that will bring up actionable solutions. I will begin with you here, sir, Mr. Olusheye. I think when the AI rave started, everybody was running. Is AI coming to take my job? Because you are the people person on this panel. Is it a myth or a reality?
Wow. Okay, interesting. I'm so elated to be here and also being part of this panel, considering that I have, unfortunately, just stood up, a forerunner, because my focus is also around AI in HR. And, you know, really, a lot of conversations have gone around AI coming to take people's jobs. But when we look at it, you know, deeply, you begin to understand that it's probably not AI taking other people's job. It's those that cannot use AI that will be displaced. And, you know, just listening to the video we watched before we started, there was an element around timing. And when I decided to talk about timing, you know, there's no better time than now to, you know, match the kind of energy that comes with the active generation in the workplace today. So remember, we have a couple of generations, about 6 of them. And at this point, we're talking about the Gen Zs, and then the, you know, the netizens or the Alpha Generation Alpha rather. Now, it means that you must then be able to match their speed. So when we start to talk about the myth, maybe 20 years ago, people still consider this as a myth. But as we are right now, there's no better time than now to be positioned to match the energy, one, of the active generation that will begin to take over the workplace. 2 is that the workplace must now become more engaging. So there's a need to also jettison the things that could be done, you know, that were such that were very monotonous. I don't know to the extent to which we have this discussion, but just to reiterate that, you know, AI is not a myth. And I'll leave this at this point, and maybe as we progress in the conversation.
I saw Dr. Umar smiling while you were speaking, so I really want to get his thoughts on the question.
Oh yeah, it's like I liked a short conversation I had this morning regarding people using AI will be taking the job of people not using AI. And I like the way he put it, and matching the energy is very, very important. The point is that the Alpha generation and the Gen Z generation are exposed to the whole AI. As an AI researcher, the major challenge I see is localizing the whole AI product. But it's something we can't take away from their hand, right? So the fact is that they are exposed, they are digital native, they know how to use technology. Now, the most important thing is how do we localize this very particular product to fit our culture, right? To fit into our belief, and we have it work for us. But then I agree with him, AI is not taking our job, but then indirectly, people using AI are going to take the jobs of people that don't know how to use AI. I'll keep it here.
Thank you so much. Tayo?
Yeah, thank you. So I think that the whole essence of any type of technology. Can you hear me? Yeah. Yes. So the whole essence of any type of technology is to help us become better. It's to help us become more efficient. A number of years ago, when I graduated uni and I was doing NYSC, I worked in one of the government parastatals, and it was a time of change because they were going away from the regular typewriters to desktop computers. And just that shift meant that a number of people in pretty much every office within an entire complex were becoming obsolete. Now, there were some people who could not upskill quickly enough, but there were also people who were able to take their knowledge of the typewriter and transfer that onto a desktop computer. Yeah. And those people became sort of more useful. You know, they could type really quickly. They needed to learn how to use a number of tools. That is the way that I see artificial intelligence sort of changing the workforce and the landscape of things. Unfortunately, it will deprecate some jobs, but like many types of technology that we've seen, it will create even more valuable jobs, across the spectrum.
Thank you, Tayo. I'll just go to Pendo now. I hope she can hear me. Having this conversation around AI, we really cannot take away the part that infrastructure plays. Because for us to have critical solutions, to be very prepared and positioned properly, infrastructure plays a huge role. I want Pendo to speak about assessing the technological infrastructure in Africa and how this supports our preparedness and readiness for AI technologies.
Thank you for that question, and it's a very important question, especially at this point that we're looking at advancing and enhancing our AI progression. For Africa in particular, I think we have a lot of work to do in the area of infrastructure. And when we speak of infrastructure, we're speaking about computing power, access to cloud. Most of the countries do not have local cloud centers, and there has been a very conversation around data privacy and sovereignty. And not having local data centers means we have to host our data either in other countries, which now brings about the conversation around latency. Or invest now locally in our own data centers within organizations and within the country, which is also expensive. So I think we need to now start looking at how can we have localized data centers. And another conversation is around power, electricity. Energy is a very serious crisis in Africa. And I'll speak from the Southern African side, because in Zambia, we've only seen the hours of load shedding only going up, and this is not going to get any better within the next few months or years. So I think it's also important for us to start investing in sustainable energy alternatives, sustainable energy such as solar. We are very blessed as a continent with sunshine and other alternative powers. So I think it's important to start looking at what are the sustainable ways in which we can invest in energy. And then finally, I'd also like to speak to the aspect of connectivity. I think only 1/3 of the African population, according to ITU, is connected to the internet. So if we're going to speak about AI, which requires computing resources, and if we're still going to host our data centers in international, we have to ensure that we have good connectivity. So I think to speak to that, I think there's a lot of financial investment that's required in order for us to accelerate the adoption of AI in the workplace and within our economies. So that said, I'll end here and pass over to you, Kristen.
Thank you, Pendo. Let's not end yet, but let's just keep the conversation going. But I understand what you mean. I want to go to Nathaniel now. Pendo really raised cogent points in her conversation about infrastructure and how it is important. And she spoke about the connectivity part, which is really, really crucial. Do you share the same sentiment she has mentioned while speaking? Nathaniel, just confirm you can hear us from here.
You're breaking up. Can you say that again?
I was just asking if you heard Pendo when she was speaking, if you share the same sentiments she has mentioned around the technologies, assessing the kind of technology we'll have to support the preparedness and readiness for AI technology, for the economies and also the workforce.
Yeah, I mean, she mentioned very good points. My take on this would be, just to mention the data here in Ethiopia, it's like we have 120 million people, and of that, the median age is 19. So we have a young workforce ready to enter into the economy. So AI by itself, I see it as a workforce. AI by itself is a job market, not only in Africa, but globally. We have the capacity to compete in that talent space. So the three pillars of AI, as I see it, is like data, talent, and infrastructure. And on the infrastructure side, just like she mentioned, we might be lagging in the capacity of providing this infrastructure for the young talent. But when it comes to the talent itself, we can export this talent within Africa and also globally to exchange value in terms of developing these new technologies that are really tailored to solve the problem in the context of Africa itself. We have our own way of life, we have our own way of problems, we have our own way of solving a problem, and our touch would mean that the world can also use from this way of solving problems using AI. So as a capacity, the way I see it is we have an emerging economy, and have an emerging young workforce, and we can utilize it and we can specialize this talent and workforce in terms of developing AI technologies itself. We can actually leverage the technology for our sake.
Thank you, Nathaniel. I will just move to Henry now. We know AI is having significant impact on various sectors. Just recently, I was part of the Ayute Africa Challenge Nigeria. It's an initiative of HEFA International. And even in agriculture, we're seeing how they are also deploying artificial intelligence in agriculture, and young people preferring solutions to challenges faced in the agricultural sector, and how AI can also be deployed to help tackle that challenge. I want you to also speak on the sectors that we have seen significant impact for AI technologies in African economies.
You're on mute.
Oh, sorry about that. Thank you very much for that question. I just want to provide a little bit of context for us to really appreciate the power of AI, and also from my fellow panelists that spoke about the timing, where we are right now. It's been projected by research that in 2030, which is not far away from here, AI will be generating about $150 trillion. All right, as a revenue or push to the economy. And if you look at that, even if Africa can take just 10% of it, that would be a lot. That is $1.3 trillion. So what does that mean to us in Africa? It means at the moment, we really have, our total GDP as a people, as a continent, 1.5 is like 50% of it. Just imagine just AI alone adding $1.5 trillion to African GDP by 2030. That is the enormous potential there for us. So, and like my fellow panelists mentioned, for Africa, we have the highest number of young people. What I mean, the future is Africa, when you look at it in terms of if we can harness and develop our capacity in this space. Now, coming to the question, yes, of course. I mean, we have some a company like Farm Crowdy, okay, Ujin Kilomo. All right, these are just a few of people in Nigeria here that are using AI, to analyze soil, and also gather some data information from our weather, okay, and which usually would be processed by AI and provide some kind of tailored solution or tailored options for our farmers in order to take advantage of such intelligence, to make sure that the crop yield gets better and better with time. That's just an application of AI, because the processing power, the aggregation of data, the analysis of the data, and providing insight that can help make decisions beyond, one man's brain, trying to struggle with all this data. So it's a tremendous opportunity for us, and it's happening already in Africa in the financial sector. I think if I go to Kenya and Zambia, when you look at M-Pesa, in the fintech company there, they are using AI today, to drive financial inclusion. Okay, what they do basically is to allow AI gather data, process data from applicants, to be able to make decisions about their scoring, their credit rating and credit scoring, just to make sure that within a split of seconds or just few minutes, you're able to analyze and say, okay, we can give credit to this guy, we will not be able to give to this other companies. So SMEs and individuals are able to access finance, in a faster way, able to access finance, and of course, reducing the risk, of these companies running out of, the risk of loan and all that. So I think the application is huge in healthcare. The same thing, So I think it's something that is growing very fast, and we are having a lot of startups go in that direction, and the result is tremendous. Maybe I can allow the space for some other persons, to chip in into this one. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Henry. I'll come to those in the room here with me. Just before we came up, I was speaking with him, and I was speaking about how there's a skill gap. And I think Tayo alluded to that also when he was giving his opening thoughts. There is this, and I think the skill gap, how do we then close that gap, especially between the older generation and the Gen Zs and the Gen Alphas? We all can agree that these generations, a lot of them have knowledge about how to do these things. If I go and give my mother ChatGPT down, she might not be able to know what prompt she needs to put or what she needs to do. How can we bridge that gap, bearing in mind that as someone that interacts with people, as an HR professional, you get to meet people from these generations and how they tackle these issues?
Okay, so, starting off earlier, I talked about the fact that this matches the current generation. But one thing I didn't also say was that it also does not exclude the other generations, okay? And so, because of the pace of activities, we have, in some of those programs that we organize around the state of the mind, we understand that at the age of 35, you start to move into what we call the crystallized intelligence. And so prior to that, you've operated with almost what we call a fluid intelligence, almost spontaneous as to how you respond or react to issues. Now, one of the things that is lacking, particularly at this time, and I'm coming to your question, is that attention for detail. So in the next 8 years, you'll find out that the baby boomers and most of the people that probably would have probably started to exit work will be most pivotal to the kind of changes that will be happening, because they will be more like subject matter experts. So where you have, so in terms of skill gaps, where people are not so vast because they are so fast, fluid, they just want things to be done now. Even with prompting, even with, querying, you probably might not be able to get them to, give the right prompts, right? But there's that guy that has the crystallized intelligence. He's gone through the whole works, okay? So, a case in point, a petrochemical engineer has experienced it at that point. Is working with a younger person now and giving guidance. So, they would have thought that they were going into extinction. They need now to upskill in terms of digital skills. They must also move beyond being tech savvy to the point where they become AI comfortable with the use of AI. Now, for the younger ones, particularly the Alpha generation Alpha and the Gen Zs, they now have moved beyond tech savviness. It's almost as to they must now start to delve into subject matter expertise, core competencies, building capacity, because obviously AI is an enabler. It will only enable the efficiency that you or the data that you have. And why this is important is AI is trained based on data. If data is flawed, then there's bias. And if there's bias, it makes a mockery of every other thing. I think I can leave this conversation at this time to say, you know what, there will be different skillings, upskillings at various levels, but it also does not preclude or exclude any of the generations. I think this is an auspicious time for Africa and indeed Africans to align also with AFTA, the African Free Trade. So I heard that figure, $1.3 trillion. And I'm wondering, that's what the entirety of Africa is supposed to generate by 2030 as a result of AFTA. It's going to be a boom, okay? I look forward to those experiences.
I will just go straight to Dr. Umar, because when we're talking about skills and upskilling, we also have to take into cognizance the educational sector. Because if we don't grow with everyone, then there will definitely be a lag behind. And I know you're an academician, you deal with these people every day. Do you think that, I know some universities already have artificial intelligence as a course to study, but I want you to broaden this for us. Where do we start from? Do we go down to basic level to start to introduce this, just as we are seeing in advanced countries or advanced continents? How do you think we can best address this and make it full-blown into the educational system?
Okay, thank you so much for the question. Yes, I happen to be somebody that champion and advocate for AI. And I think one thing we need to do is introduce AI in each and every level of education, starting with the primary school, right? My part of advocacy is reproducing, not consuming. For whatever we have so far, it's all about consuming what is out there from the West. Why not have AI engineers, machine learning engineers, data engineers, and we build in-house? So one thing we do in my university, basically in 400 level, we have AI as a subject. But the goal is to bring it back to 200 level, because at 400 level, you have a semester or 2 semesters to leave the school. Why not start from 200, whereby they can continue from there? And one thing I do as an advocate is I'm running an AI classes free, right, in collaboration with an organization. So the goal is to have more people and the youth in this very particular space. So one thing I will point out is change in curriculum, and that has to bring in the government in place. There is need for us to upgrade our current curriculum. For schools that don't have AI as a course, they need one. And for schools that do, they need to change the curriculum to meet the recent development in AI. We're talking about generative AI, but if you look at our curriculum, we're talking about teaching students LIPS, an old programming language, where people have moved away from LIPS, COBOL, and other languages, but we are still having those in our own curriculum. So it takes an advanced lecturer to move away from the traditional curriculum to introduce new programming language. But if you stick to those in the older generation, they continue with what we have. So that brings in the government in place. There is need to update our curriculum, which is very key. And there is need to have additional hub for AI training and bootcamp. And most importantly, apprenticeship, where you get somebody that's an expert in this field, connect him to students that are willing to learn, and he builds this very particular student, which is largely what we do as a team. And there are so many other things. Then also support AI startup, because that's where the apprenticeship is going to play more better role. You have an AI startup, and you connect these very particular people with people that are willing to learn AI. And then what we can all do at this point is take online courses. There are so many online courses where we can learn from. But I'm going to stop here.
Okay, I will still, just before I come to you, Tayo, I want to hear from Pendo, also get her thoughts on the educational system and engraving AI as a critical part of that system. What's the situation like in Zambia, and if there are lessons other African countries can also take from there?
Yeah, education is a very, very critical part of the advancement and progression of artificial intelligence in Africa. And we have seen a lag in adopting some of these technologies, not because we do not see the potential, but because we do not have the capacity, and the training is also insufficient, or let me say the quality of the education in terms of AI training. We also saw this in the software engineering, the era of tech and software engineering. While there was high demand, we did not have readily skilled talent to hone certain software engineering roles. So for Africa, what does this mean in terms of education and looking at the AI era? Is if you look at the universities, we don't have universities from Zambia, we don't have graduates who have graduated with bachelors in data science as at now. And even the public universities are not yet offering these courses or these programs. And so what does that look like for the future? Because the university is a place where, which nurtures students to hone the jobs of the future, right? So we have a paradox where we have jobs in AI and new jobs, and then the students have been trained in or are trained in roles that are no longer, or that have become obsolete. And then they'll be saying there are no jobs, and yet the industry will be saying we need talent in these new roles. So I think it's important that now the education sector adapts and becomes more agile. And what does agility mean? We can also partner with internationals, with our Western counterparts in offering training. How can we have maybe say hybrid sort of learning where we can, if we don't have enough AI tutors or trainers, we have a hybrid kind of collaboration where students are still able to learn and train in these new technologies. And also upskilling, I mean skill sets. I think it's important to have the hands-on skills. And another important aspect is the public-private sector collaboration. So there's a disconnect between the industry and the academia as well. So if we can have those two speaking to each other, what are the pressing problems or challenges that we have in the industry? And what can the students start looking at? So that once the students graduate, they are ready to solve real-world problems. Because what happens is students graduate, they get into industry, they can't really work on they're not readily hireable, or they can't kickstart a career in AI or data science because they don't have the domain knowledge, or the skills are also lagging. And at the end of the day, there's that disconnect between the academia and industry. And then finally, I'd also like to speak to the aspect of research. We have a very poor research culture, and I think this has to change because AI requires, for us to truly innovate, we need to research, and investment in research and development will be very critical in this AI era. So for the academia, I think it's important, research and development, to also have public-private and academia collaboration, partnerships, and also finding ways in which we can start investing or immediately actually training students and also the entire populace on what AI, on the AI skills, because these will be very critical for this era that we're in and the near future. So I think with that said, I think I'll submit from here.
Thank you so much, Pendo. Just before I go to Nathaniel and Henry, I want to speak to Tayo here. And crucial point, public-private partnership. What would a public-private partnership that will work to help better adoption of AI technologies in Africa look like for you?
So there are a couple of building blocks to making that work. On the private side, I think that a lot of the focus today, a lot of the noise and sort of adoption of technology and artificial intelligence is from the private side of things. On the public side, the building blocks include some of the things that Dr. Umar and Pendo have spoken about, which is just improving the quality of education, but also improving the adoption within our public institutions. It's a long journey to being in that place, because even on the private side, where we've seen a lot of adoption, there's still individuals and call it companies today where there is a slight, they think of using AI as substandard, right? I've heard people say, oh, this looks like it was written by AI. Right, and they say it in a derogatory manner, say, yes. Yeah, why would you do that? Yes. But actually, that's what you're supposed to do. It doesn't matter how it was done. What matters is the veracity of the data that's in there. And Penny talked about research. If you're great at research, then that lends itself to sort of writing better prompts just by default, right? On the public side, when I think of even just upskilling to, let's remove AI, just upskilling to new technologies, right? So I'd use the example of moving from typewriters to desktops. Today you go into a government office, and this is not limited to Nigeria. This is a lot of sub-Saharan Africa. And you see that the technology that they use is maybe a decade ago, right? And they have all of this bureaucracy around, budget and change and change management, and even the way that they hire people. And think about, for you to make a change as a society, you have to allow things sort of permeate. Today, if you look at the average age, and this is not to be ageist, but if you look at the average age of people in, call it mid-management in public institutions, right, and how long they've been there and how long they've been doing things the way that they've been doing it, you can see the challenge that that you have to sort of face and overcome for you to make those changes. So what a public-private partnership would look like, to answer your question directly, is a world where we can replicate things like the 3MTT thing that Nigeria is doing at scale. 3 million people out of a workforce of, call it, maybe 100 million. It's not a lot. It doesn't make a huge dent. And then when you think of when these people come out, what is the timeline to sort of assimilate them into the workforce? We need to speed that up as well. And we need to give it some time. We need to commit resources to it. When the private sector commits resources, they expect returns.
Yeah.
But there's no clear path to that revenue right now. If you are a GT bank, for instance, and you have a fund to sponsor X number of people into technology, right? There's no direct line from that to your bottom line today. So it's really just CSR that. Yeah. So it's difficult. I think that the solution there is for the public sector to figure out how to compensate you for doing those types of things. Mm-hmm. Whether it's tax rebates, whether, I don't know what it is today, but those are some of the things that I think we can do.
Thank you, Tayo. During your opening thoughts for answering this question, I just remembered when the word delve caused problem on X, formerly Twitter, that it was like a mayhem on Twitter because someone used the word delve, and it became a cliche for, if you want to talk about AI, just say delve. I delved into it. Meanwhile, for us here, it was a normal thing. Exactly. Speaking with my daughter, I would say, don't delve into this, don't do that. It was a normal thing, but it's now being perceived as too sophisticated or too machine-like in writing conversations. And I think that's also another part that really needs to come to the fore. We know Africa is preparing to be ready, but when we are fully ready, what are we going to come face to face with when it comes to AI technologies? I want to go to Nathaniel now. Still staying on public-private sector partnerships. What's the situation like in Ethiopia? Just like I asked Pendo. Okay, we don't have Nathaniel online yet. Let me just go to Henry. Henry, I will just come to you. When we talk about public, we want to also talk about the aspect of policy. Dr. Umar, Tayo, they've also stated about how we know that the public aspect of the PPP needs to do more. What are your sentiments or thoughts on that?
Okay, so thank you very much. I think this is the most crucial part of this discourse. Okay, I'll give you, for instance, now just a little bit of data, to portray the need for this. As a continent, it was until the month of July this year that we'll have AI strategy for the continent approved. I'm talking of July 2024. Okay, and as a continent, we just have about 7 countries that have AI strategy as a nation, just 7 countries, to tell you how far we are, from where we should be. Okay, so the point is, it has to start from the top. That is the fact. We can do so much at a tactical level with so many initiatives happening individually, private sector, people on their own doing some stuff, all right? But that will not push us, that not leapfrogging. It will not happen, okay? So we need to educate our lawmakers. We need to review the value chain, AI value chain. If they know that this technology can move our GDP or add 1.5 trillion to our economy, I think their eyes will open a little bit to say, you mean there's something like this? And then it starts from there, okay, to build policies, to build framework, not just in the regulatory side, which is, of course, we have it here and there, data regulation, privacy, and all this, but what is the roadmap? In this value chain, what are we supposed? What is our target? What do we want? I'm talking about value now, and I'm talking about returns on investment now. So government need to map out this and say, look, we don't have infrastructure, but we have manpower. We don't have infrastructure. We have youthful age, that can study this thing. Now, what is the plan? What is the incentive where we're going to make provision for the private sector to play? You see, like Omar said, if a private sector practitioner puts 1 naira into something, he's expecting returns. Okay, so government should be able to provide this policy framework that would give them some incentive, maybe a tax break, anything, all right, that would ensure that they put in some kind of investment, and this is the return that will come as a strategic move to drive, the different nations to where we should be on AI work. If not, we will come back to the same thing we are witnessing today, where we are just consuming technology and not producing anything. Now, by 2030, it is already clearly noted that 1%, or let me say 1 out of 5 consumption will happen in Africa, meaning 1 in every 5 consumption will be taken by someone living in Africa. This is already established. The matter is, yes, this money will be spent here. How can we as a nation or as a people prepare ourselves to make sure that we produce these things? Else, this is the money moving out of Africa. So this has to start from the government providing this policy in place, a clear roadmap, a structure in place to ensure that this happens from the primary school, nursery school, up, to the universities. A very clear-cut plan, knowing where private sector will need to play in and what to attract them, and what to keep them, and what to promise them. All these things put into, a framework that we can measure. The point again is the measurement. If we don't measure it, then it's of no use. I mean, we have so many of these things hanging everywhere. But measurable strategy and roadmap that would ensure inclusion, that will ensure that even at continental level, I tell you something, there are different countries that have strength in different areas. If you go to the south, maybe South Africa, they have infrastructure. What in the AI value chain can they give Africa? Then you come down to some of us in the West, maybe you have more youthful age. More youthful people. If you look at fintech, now Nigeria, is on top with our people. What can we contribute? What can we cross-sell across Africa to start with? To tap into this revenue that's happening. If not, the whole thing will also move back, to people that are ready to work. So there's a need for a holistic policy, targeted policy, deliberate policy, and a drive to make sure that this thing comes to pass. That is where conversation will need to be moved to at this point.
Thank you, Henry. Big on harnessing our strengths. And still staying with some of the thoughts he has laid out, because I know that there's still a lot of conversation going on around the workforce. What strategies do you think we need to put in place to ensure that our workforce are prepared or ready for the AI era?
Okay. So first, mindset. Because at some point, and I think it was Tayo that mentioned something around when you prepare a document, and obviously AI assisted or generated is disparate or demeaned. So that's that mindset that needs to shift, to say, okay, this has enabled the productivity of this, has made it more efficient to the point where we can now have a faster turnaround time. So, if I understand what you meant, it's that we must start to prepare the entire workforce to say, it's not, lack of a better, it's not utopic, all right, for us to be able to begin to see where AI takes some dominance, across board. Then also, beyond the mindset, is that there's also a need to start to deal with these things around routines. At the heartbeat of every organization is employee engagement. And as we begin to see a drop in employee engagement levels, studies have shown employee engagement levels now has cost us over $8.6 trillion, okay, and that level is about 15%, dropping constantly. And this is Gallup. Gallup is an advisory, consulting company, and with this data, we are also now wary of the fact that if we don't get our people engaged well enough, then we cannot achieve organizational effectiveness and efficiency. And that means there will be a drop in productivity, there will be a drop in profit, and even a drop in performance. So in raising up HR, almost within the principles that I work, is looking at areas where we can deal with those sentiments quickly. Remember when he started to talk about the migration the transformation from typewriter to desktop. But it was also during that same era that if someone offended or did something that was, needed to have been curtailed in the organization, remember the postal system. It would have taken eons for it to get to head office.
Yes.
And then maybe the guy has now learned the lesson, HR has now helped to condition the guy, and then they will now say, approve for you to dismiss. But this guy has now become ready to work, right? So that's also what must now happen, because if you look at the public, we do a couple of work with the public sector, and I'm not putting them on the spot. The people that are taking decisions now, they probably also just jettison this bit. So we're saying my advocacy is around beyond the digital skills and ensuring that we get them tech savvy,
Yes.
getting that mid-level to senior level in the public sector that will drive the policy, become tech savvy. The ones below are already tech savvy, to the best of my knowledge. So can we then get them to embrace AI? I think as those conversations go on, it becomes obvious that this is something that has come to stay, and we must just be ready for it. And I'll leave it at that.
Okay, I want to come to Dr. Omar. I have a couple of mentees that a lot of lecturers have said, don't use ChatGPT for your project, though. They will even put a very big X with red pen. How do we change that? Is it lazy to use ChatGPT for this? Because we are meant to understand, like he said, AI is an enabler. It's a tool that's supposed to make whatever you're doing better or help you in places that you are lacking. How then, goes back to mindset, how do we go around this?
Yeah, so I will start with a statement, mindset. There is the need to shift people's mindset, most especially in the academic environment in Nigeria. I'm there. I know people that say,
it's your constituents. That's why we want you to.
So I know there are so many people that are against you using ChatGPT, but then there are so many AI tools that reduces the amount of time you put in research. I'm a researcher. It takes you months, 2 months to crack a topic. But now there are tools for literature review. It does that for you in few hours.
Absolutely.
Before you know, you have a comprehensive literature review. So the fact is that in this part of the world, we tend to ignore the policy, guidance, and framework, and we don't even have our own framework. But even the top publishing houses came up with frameworks. There are times you use AI and you indicate specifically where you use AI for, but you can't have it as a core author. It's not allowed. So based on those policies, researchers are expected to use this technology. But then the knowledge gap is here. Those in the public sector and even few in the private sector say, no, you cannot use this tool. While others over there are using the tool. I happen to be in a conference. I know it's even a training organized by one of these universities in UK regarding AI for research. So there's this organization that runs a research program for Africans. And the fact is that the assignment you give to your student now, it's all about logical thoughts. No, okay, write an essay about this. Definitely they will just put it and they get the answer. But what you do is to frame the assignment in the sense that they are going to work. Now, you need to understand their critical thoughts.
Yes.
So what we need to do now is to change the way we run our educational system. Unfortunately, I schooled outside Nigeria for my undergraduate. I did physics in Nigeria, that is the normal physics. But over there, it's a different case. What we had here was garbage in, garbage out. They give you the equation, they give you and they say, ask, okay, find the acceleration due to gravity.
And find X.
Exactly.
X
But then, there it was an applicable question. You have to think critically to solve the question.
Yeah.
So I think there is need for us to shift our educational process and come up with a framework that adapt to the current situation. So the fact that you cannot use ChatGPT is not there. It should not be the topic of discussion. but how to use it to support what you do. And people out there in the West are using it. The amount of research they chunk out is very high. The fact is that as much as possible, the core work is the methodology. And we just have to be sincere in whatever we do. Don't cook the data, don't forge the data should be read. But then instead of spending days or months reading literature, writing literature review, use this tool to reduce, because the aim of literature review is to understand the previous knowledge and see the gap. There are AI tools that will even tell you the gap in this research. And then it will take on that researcher like months. So what I would say is that the mindship needs to be there, and the most important thing is what? Is train the trainer. We just have to have trained the trainer, where you bring in AI expert, and they train our academician to understand where we can use this very particular technology and how to use the technology. And then those in the academia come up with a policy related to the African challenge. I think I will stop here.
Thank you, Umar. Also, we'll have time for question and answer. So if you have questions, just pen them down. When it's that time, I will come to us to take those questions. We have Nathaniel back with us now.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Great.
Can you hear me?
Thank you. Yes, I can hear you. So we are talking about a mindset shift for the AI technology in preparedness for, we want to really accept this thing. We're ready to have it come to Africa. What's the situation like in Ethiopia? And also, what's the adoption like also?
Okay, so unmuted.
Nathaniel, if you can hear me, you're breaking, so we cannot really hear you very well. Okay, we'll just come back to get his thoughts on that. Tayo, I want you to speak to opportunities. So we know, because at the end from this panel, we want to be able to go home with solutions. We want people here to say, these and these are the key takeaways from here. What are the opportunities there in this value chain, both on tapped that we really need to also look into?
Yeah, thanks. So the opportunities are, it's easy to see the opportunities when you think of it from what are the gaps, right? And there are gaps both in consumption and in creation. The consumption one is the one that's closer to us today, where there are very many tools that we don't even know about. So every time today, when people talk about AI, ChatGPT comes up. But if you ask heavy users, some people will tell you that ChatGPT is maybe not top 10 AI tools. So if you are in academics, they would tell you there are things that, like he had mentioned, there are things that you use for research. There are things that you use for different parts of your research work. And then if you start to solve that by just letting people know that this can help you solve this problem better, both on an individual level, but also on a commercial scale, so companies and businesses as well. So I run a consulting business, and we help businesses, startups in Nigeria expand into other countries, right? And every now and then, people ask questions around competition. Can you do desk research? How long will it take? We need this information. And a lot of this information, yes, you can find it online, but you need to synthesize it in a way that makes sense for the business. And we do this thing where we say, we can turn it around in 1 week if you give us the details that you need. And people are just incredulous, right? They're unsure how it's possible to do that. But it's because we know the tools to use. And that information is not hidden anywhere, right? It's just right there. So there's that. On the creation side is much more complex. Again, so one of the things that we do at TileStack is help companies upscale their teams in many different areas. Generative, things being one of those. when people come out of these trainings, what you see is just an ability to execute on ideas that they didn't even know they had, right? Just because you have a new skill now, you can now say, actually, I can use this to create this thing. And I can do it much faster. Maybe not better if you're just starting, but much faster than I could have done before. Or maybe I couldn't even have done it at all before. And now your problem has to be, your new problem is now iteration. It's no longer creation. It's no longer starting something. Is taking the sort of steps to make it better and refining and doing all of those. So the opportunities, just to answer your question again directly, I think that the opportunities for people to be better at their current jobs is first of all not I need to go and get a job in AI. Is that today I am a business leader. How do I sort of figure out my financials and what it looks like between now and the end of next year? I would have had to outsource it to an accounting firm, but there is an accounting tool that is, I just need to put in the data, like write the questions the way that I understand them, and it will guide me through it. And that's efficiency. That's driving your business closer to profitability faster. You're spending less money. And on the creation side, this is where I think education has maybe the strongest part to play. And there are now sort of institutions that are focusing on this, maybe not universities, but there are institutions that are saying, come and take a 12-week course in how to do this part, how to use this tool, how to do this part of AI. And I think that the more people go into that, the more we see, because if you go onto pretty much any website of a tech company, a mid-sized tech company in Nigeria today, you will see roles that are open for, maybe AI specific, but also roles in like customer success. And they're saying, oh, you need to be able to do this because in the past, we would have 10 people in this role, but now we only have 2. We know that it's possible, but you need to be able to do this and this and this. So those are some of the opportunities that exist.
Thank you, Tayo. I will just go now to Pendo before we take questions and responses before closing thoughts for today. We know that in preparing for a full-blown AI era in Africa, we also need to be prepared for the challenges that might come with this integration. We know it's not all kumbaya if AI eventually comes. When we tackle the problem of adoption, tackle the problem of mindset, there might be other challenges that might arise in that process. Pendo, I want you to speak to what are the challenges and how can we then position to probably tackle them, even not fully tackle them, to be able to address them to a certain level.
Yeah, I think we have actually slightly touched on some of the challenges, and I think one of which is consumerism. If we do not develop our own AI tools that are tailored, that are African-centric, we risk having some sort of culture moral decay, in that those models or AI would not be built in the African context. And what does that mean? The aspect of bias and inclusion will just further be exacerbated. I think over time we've been speaking about trying to narrow the gender gap, trying to include everyone. And what does that also mean? I think when you speak of the workforce, most of the reference is made towards the formal sector. But if we look at the African setup, the informal sector is the majority, about 80% plus the last time I checked. So what does that mean for them? If that's the huge population of the sector in Africa, how does AI impact that sector? And these are the conversations that we need to start having now, so that we do not exclude anyone going forward. Because what the I think another report from the World Economic Forum does show that there's likely to be a gap between the highly skilled, educated, and the informal sector, and that's now a financial gap, and that's what we've been trying to close all along. So does that mean that the efforts to enable financial inclusion, to enable inclusivity in different parts of the sectors will go to West. So I think we need to start having conversations around how do we include the marginalized, how do we ensure that those in the informal work sector equally benefit from the emergence of AI, and also women as well. I think we have seen that women have been generally being excluded in most of these advancements of technology. If we look at some of the facial recognition or some of these AI technologies, they have bias because they've been predominantly built on Western data. So we need to start having, how do we create our own data? How do we build models or AI tools that are African-centric, such that even if we have to adopt them, we do not expect a further marginalization or exclusion of certain groups of people. And which also brings me down to the point of ethics. I think ethics is a very critical conversation, and we need to be aware that if we do not build or adopt these models responsibly, I think speaking to what I've already spoken about, and representation of most groups, and also our culture. Africa has a very diverse culture, and also languages as well. So what does that mean for us? I think these are very important. We do not have all the answers right now, but we need to start asking questions around what does it mean for us? What do we need to do now? I think we have the opportunity to shape the next era of technology, or the industrial or the revolution of AI. But I think it comes with so many challenges, and those are some of the challenges that are very pertinent, that are very important to have addressed now, especially when it comes to aspects of ethics, language, as well as Africa, and also our culture. We need to preserve our culture even in the advent of AI. And finally, I may have already said finally, but also the aspect of, we also need to look at the workforce. If we're going to say AI is going to displace some of these roles, and we're not upskilling or changing policies to ensure that there's a safety net for those who will be displaced, it becomes another challenge, because for nations, I think it's important their productivity for most of our nations is measured by the number of people we're able to employ. And if we're going to take out some people due to the emergence of AI and routine tasks being automated, while we're not investing in upskilling and training and ensuring that everyone is prepared, there's that risk of people being laid off or made redundant. And I think it becomes, has an impact on the economy and also our communities, because at the end of the day, we have these jobs, we need to feed our families, we need to support our communities, and also it brings a certain sense of satisfaction as an individual if you have a job and you're earning money. But if that is taken away from you, or if you're unable to grow or move to the next level, it becomes some sort of has a social negative impact on the community. And I think from an ethics perspective, we want to ensure that the well-being and the quality of then the livelihood of people is improved in the advent of AI. So I think it's very important that we not only look at the upside, but we also address some of the serious challenges that AI is likely to pose in the event that we do not address these critically.
Thank you, Pendo. Henry, I see you are nodding a lot, and I am eager to hear your thoughts on this. Before we go to Nathaniel, I think we have him now. Henry, let's hear your thoughts, please.
Okay, so I think she probably took a very broad and comprehensive response to this. That is the fact. So whatever I'm adding here is just to support the point, because sometimes we look at the positive, we look at the energy in the future, but there's always a consequence and a trade-off here and there. So it is important. I think the most important thing here is that we need to own the narrative for Africa, okay, because AI lives on data, okay, and I mean, if you've used it a lot, you discover what exactly she's saying. All right, it's always biased in certain ways, and also a way of, kind of introducing a culture that is probably not ours into the mix. Why? Because we don't have, let me say, aggregation of data and owning the narrative for us to train this AI in our own context. The context and the nuances, within the continent is very critical. Okay, if not, it will destroy the fabric of the nation, of the people, even the society. So we need to, and that's what I was talking about, looking at where we play and how we collaborate as Africa. We will not be able, there's no one nation in Africa that can actually, say, okay, hey, in the entire value chain, we can handle it. No, we have strength in different places and we can collaborate. And I think that was the aim of the continental AI strategy, actually. And I think from that point, we can go, to play in the areas where we can bring something on board, where we can bring some value to the continent and own the narrative. That is the critical thing here. The AIs we have here, the models, the algorithms should be built with us in mind, okay? And the data should be our data, so that the learning can be tailored to us. Else, we'll lose it completely. And that is the conversation that is very, very important for all the countries to begin to look at in terms of regulation, in terms of preparing, this adoption in a scale. So I think that's quite insightful one from Pendo. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Henry. Nathaniel, if you can hear me now, previously I asked around issues around adoption in Ethiopia and challenges faced to adoption of AI technologies as Africa prepares to be fully ready for the AI integration era.
Yeah. So I'm sorry about disconnecting a couple of times. I jot down the points and I'll just run them down. I mean, in Ethiopia, there's an institute that is led by the state. It's called the Ethiopian Artificial Intelligence Institute, and it's responsible for exposing AI to the community in terms of awareness, as well as developing in it local technologies. And it has a mandate and has been operating for the past 2-3 years, and it has a tremendous amount of success in the past. And this shows how the government is actually accredited AI as a huge opportunity for a country like Ethiopia that is latecomer into the whole sense. And just the policy-wise, that there's a playground for any AI technology to be adapted if there's any sort of innovation that might disrupt the ongoing traditional way of doing things. It supports startups to actually have a small room for playing around before disrupting and just causing that much of a damage. I think this can show, this can be a good model for policy in terms of how we can integrate AI into an existing system without destabilizing the overall process of existing natural businesses, and the huge focus is not just on AI but digitization. And I think the panelist also has mentioned how sensitive our data is, and that means we need to digitize our own process. We need to digitize our own communications. We need to digitize our own knowledge base, our languages, and all that stuff need to be gathered as soon as possible, so that we have the leverage of owning the data. And at the same time, there's a huge leverage on there's a huge project that has been launched for I think it was 2-3 weeks ago, 5 million coders. So that's in partnership with the UN government. So the main aim for this is to create a workforce that is ready to take over this capacity when it comes to digitization. So as much as it takes it's a risk that it poses on taking other jobs, but it also creates a huge job opportunity for the coming generation. And the way I see it is, instead of trying to force AI into the public sector, what I see is just have a public-private relationship where like the tech and all that tech savviness can be injected into the public sector without destabilizing the ongoing public sector, how it has been operating, all the methods that they used to use. So without destabilizing that, there's a move or a trend that is used to inject this digital capacity. For example, in an organization, they're just forming this tech directorate that is responsible for teaching tech for all or exposing tech for all workers in that organization. At the same time, taking the load off from this traditional way of this people that does not have exposure to AI, taking their load off and try to fast track their process or try to fast track their efforts without just putting them into a lot of trouble into learning this new technology. And also, when it comes to the youngsters, they have been freelancing, they've been learning online. The self-taught era is also booming here. Nobody's waiting for schools to adapt AI. Nobody's waiting for schools to inject AI into their curriculum. I know it's a must that we have to push that way, but also there should be another perspective that these young workforces are not only waiting for the education to adapt and change, but they are moving in their own direction of learning online and just have presence in the global workforce. And we have a huge growth in terms of freelancing, and also we have startups and companies that are devoted into upskilling these youngsters in the informal educational center, like short-term online trainings, and making them capable and fit for the global challenge. And I mean, the way it has been going here, more than AI being adopted locally, the local talent force is developing and making themselves ready to sell this capacity to the global markets and try to find a way of making a revenue out of the workforce as well, so that can be injected back into adopting AI locally. Because it's like the way I see it is financing it can be a little tricky, because we have been going on through our own roadblocks, we have our own other issues. So financing is the key criteria in terms of everything we've talked about, from infrastructure, digitization, awareness creation. Everything needs finance. And how do we finance it? The way I see it is, if we say we have all this young work, if we enable them, if we can take the top ones and have an online remote gig where they can sell their knowledge, be competent, and create some sort of value, and use that value to actually give back to the community and do some good. So yeah, that's how I see it.
Thank you so much. A whole lot to unpack from everything he has said, but because we don't want to take more of our time, I think our time is already fast spent, I will just open the floor for 3 questions. If you have a question, just put your hands up. Just 3 questions. My questions have passed through you. Organizers, how many questions can I take, please? Only 2? Hey. Okay, just put your hands up and we'll just take the questions very quickly. The questions and the please, we'll take only 4. If any question is alike, we'll just take the 2 in all. 1, 2, 3, 4. Sad, because you are smiling at me. I'm really finding it difficult not to take your questions. But we'll respond to the questions very quickly. Number 1, please, let's go. Very, very quickly, please. Let's not dilly-dally.
Good afternoon. I wanted to find out, in terms of research, does ChatGPT produce plagiarism? Maybe in terms of research for a topic or maybe research assignment. Okay. Does it produce plagiarism, or how can you avoid that? Thank you. Very much.
Number 2. Don't worry, they'll come to you, sir. The mic is behind you, sir.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Mr. Musa Megari. I'm all the way from Yobe State.
From what state, sir?
Yobe State.
Yobe State, okay.
Yes, I'm working at Federal Medical Center as a principal cognition secretary. So, as the rise of the AI I started putting myself to see that I want to learn AI technology, because I have attended various online courses on AI generation, which is recently I've attended one that currently taking place in Kenya online. That is AI technology and the of artificial intelligence and the of technology. So my question is that how can African government will continue to support the adoption of AI technology so that we can move our African forward at the eyes of the global.
Thank you. There's one person behind. We might not take all the questions, but please, you can walk up to any of the panelists here if you have thoughts, and they will share the thoughts with you. Go ahead, sir.
Good morning. My name's Kabir Lawal from Value Chain Television.
Good morning.
I want to talk from the aspect of broadcasting. Way back, broadcasting was actually down because the AI was not well pronounced. But now that the AI has been introduced, and in Nigeria, we're not lagging behind because, yes, it's a kudos for us. We are really making use of that space. So with this sitting, what do you think can be done to make it, more pronounced in media houses, to make dissemination of information very, very effective?
Thank you so much. Please go ahead, sir.
Good day. My name is Ahmad Muhammad Salisu from Kano State. I have a question, and it is the fact that my team was tasked to implement AI into, let's say, 15 business firms in Kano.
Okay.
So when we were tasked to do that, absolutely we were only able to come up with only 3 firms. And the fact is that each firm that we approach, they tend to ask us that we have to provide them with a written or whatever report of a previous firm that had implemented AI and can show what have they got in terms of like capital, like what have they got with implementation of AI before they can accept us to implement AI into their. So what do you think? Should we focus on providing them with those data that, okay, there are some certain firms that implemented AI and this is their returns, or should we focus on telling them that it is not something that you would just expect, let's say, capital return, which is it's just investment in human nature, and it will pay. So what do you think we should do?
Okay.
My question is for Dr. Umar. How can we establish a balance between using AI ethically, preventing its misuse, especially in academia? Where do you draw the line between differentiating content that has been generated entirely by AI as opposed to where AI was an enabler to ensure fair assessment?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Rabosh Aibu. I have, you see, for us to adopt this AI fully blown in Africa, there are 2 aspects, software and hardware. We seem to have focused a lot on the skills and the software aspect, but the hardware. If you go to any digital hub, if you look around, you can see an HP device there. You will see Huawei device, Dell. Africa seems to be, that gap is still there. So what steps can each African country take for us to be able to design and then indigenously produce the hardware so that we're comfortably in charge? Thank you.
Thank you. I want our panelists to respond very, very briefly. Anybody that needs further clarification can come and meet you wherever you are and get a response. Our time is fast spent. Tayo, please speak to the business in Kano.
Yeah, I think that, first of all, I hope that you have an expected outcome from this pilots that you're doing. If you do, you've picked 15. There are going to be people who are just going to require more time for you to convince them. My preference would be for you to expand your pool to 50, and when you get to 15 who are willing, you start. I think that the technology is still nascent enough that there's many people who don't know about it, and so you can expand your net.
Thank you, Tayo. Doctor, plagiarism and differentiating between AI being an enabler and being used entirely.
So I will start with plagiarism. Plagiarism is not even is least of the problem. ChatGPT can give you fake citation. It has landed a lawyer in US into trouble, right? So the fact that we advocate, okay, you can use ChatGPT for your research, the most important thing is that you need to differentiate the context from AI. So it's a brainstormer. You talk to it, it gives you the structure. You have a topic, it will outline the structure for you where you need to fill in the gap. You generate a content without reading related literature is unethical. That is AI-generated content. And there are devices that are used to dictate AI-generated content. They are not that very special because at times, even human-generated content are classified as AI-generated, and they skip some AI. So as an individual, there are ethical policy, and as a researcher, if you do that in your room alone, we don't know, but then you need to ask yourself, I was in a webinar where I talked about using AI tool for research. One thing I keep hammering on is what? It's individual integrity. You just have to be sincere, right? So instead of plagiarism is not the main concern, fake citation is the main concern. So use the tool as calculator. If I ask you 1 million plus 1 million, you bring out your phone, right? And you give me the result. So use AI as a tool, not as something that will be doing the work for you. I'll keep it short.
That answers your questions too?
For academician, I had a class. What I did is that they need to write an article. These are undergraduate students related to software security. I know if I say, okay, write this article, they are going to generate the content from AI. But this was a yardstick. You need a published article, and the time frame was 3 years, meaning 2024, 2023, 2022. You just have to go and get this article. That is number one. I'm going to check that. Number two, whatever article you are using, you need to reference the article, and you are uploading the article. I know there is a tool you can use to summarize the information. That is not my problem. But you dig in to get this very particular recent article, talking to the article, you have the recent information, and have a structure. It needs to be this heading, this title. It has to be according to my structure. So meaning we, the academician, we just have to go extra mile to create whatever we're creating. It's not the content that matters to me now. It's the relevance of the article, and then the structure, and then the logical thought, which is the most important thing. So we have to change assessment.
Thank you, Dr. Umar. Lecturers don't like, they like talking and talking, if you leave them. I have the broadcasting question for you. So the broadcaster is saying, how can they further accept? I have been in the newsroom, and I can assure you that editors, they will fight you for AI. So how can we then promote that adoption in the broadcast industry?
Okay, so it has started. And how has it started? There's something we call reverse mentoring. You are in the broadcast sector. When you go back, you begin to democratize this insight. Say, oh, there are better ways to kill this rat without shedding blood. You see at the mainstream also, even with, will I say YouTube and all of that. Yes. Now I'm seeing headless videos, creating narratives, speaking to the public. And I'm wondering, how is this done? I become inquisitive about it. I ask some of the people that seem to be savvy about, and then they provide those solutions. It still boils down to this readiness and mindset that I talked about earlier on. Is one of the things you can also begin to do is to start to, create those tips. The days of a quote in Africa, 15 dogs went on, it's over. Begin to talk about quotable quotes as to how AI can begin to help your business. And I think as people begin to see this, and I love the fact that the lady talked about an area which I'm not focused around, the informal sector. And it's clear. Yeah. So radio, begin to let people know. And just begin to share this information. And somehow we will have a ripple effect. Thank you.
Thank you. Pendo, I will just throw the last question here to you about how African governments can help. I know you alluded to that already in your conversation. So just in 30 seconds, what do you want to add? How African governments can further help drive this adoption? Just 1 minute, please.
Thank you. So I think it's important. Policy is very critical in driving this adoption. So while we can have policy, we have the AU strategy coming up, also operationalizing it. Sometimes policy just remains policy, but then it's not implemented. So I think it's important to have that policy and also operationalizing it such that we can actually see the results of the policies that have been put in place.
Thank you so much. Just before as we close this, draw the curtains on this panel, I would ask each panelist one word for what AI technology will look like in Africa in the next 20 years. Just one word. One word on what it will look like. What will be the one word that will drive it for you? Okay, you're still thinking, Dr. Umar, one word from you.
Well, for me, it's creation, which is production aspect, and which is something I hammer on. And I will use this opportunity to say, I have an advert in my hand. They are looking for an AI engineer. The payment is 400 to 500,000. If you are capable, reach out to me. So let's go to the learning journey. It's the production for me.
Again, one word. Tayo, one word. Please don't give me a sentence.
Consumption.
Consumption. Pendo, do you have one word for me?
Quality of life. I hope that's one word.
Henry, one word from you, please.
Value creation.
Okay, so it is. I have confirmed that my panelists don't like one word. Please, a round of applause for all the panelists that have joined this panel to add value. Olusheye Taiwo Adekoju, Managing Partner, Strength Africa, Pendo Manjele, Data and Analytics Senior Specialist, Zambia National Commercial Bank, Nathaniel Kabede, Co-Founder and CEO, New Era Research and Development, Tayo Showale, Founder, Thrive Consulting Limited, Henry Ogbu, Head of Delivery, FinTech, Philips Consulting, Dr. Umar Adam Ibrahim, AI Researcher and Startup Advisor. A round of applause for them, please. And my name is Christiana Amadou. Thank you for listening to us.